Hello and welcome to The Hero's Spouse. I'm Kenda Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have Angela. Angela has a bomb drop of November 15th, 2018, a date of marriage of 2004, and she has a vanisher who is a high energy replayer. Angela has one of those questions that many of you have because it goes unanswered. And it's one of those questions I don't really have the answers to because of the nature of it. And so you'll get it when you read this. What information is there about vanishers? Do they ever contact you again? Do they vanish forever? Should we reach out even if we've done previously and we've been ignored? Is there any information, any information will be greatly received. Yeah, I know. And that's what's so hard. The little information we have about vanishers is for those who do respond when you reach out, or who do eventually return, or who do stop being vanishers or have come back into the life, or just grapevine information. So what do we know? We don't know a lot. Are they more angry or less angry? Are they more stable because they are able to maintain being away from you, not codependent with you? Or are they less stable? Have they had such a psychotic break that they fell off the end of the earth? It could be both. I had one left behind spouse who I spoke with while I was going through it, and we would call each other weekly. And for the first 2 years, her husband was a clinging boomerang. He was a recovering alcoholic, and he'd been in recovery and in AA, very active in AA for about 20 years. Fell off the wagon. I don't know but I don't know that he did that at first. It was drugs rather than alcohol. I think he finally got into drugs. But for the first 2 years, he was a clinging boomerang. He hid the alienator, and we don't know that there might not have been an alienator for the first year or year and a half. We don't know. But eventually the alienator was there. He eventually married the alienator, I think. And I think she may have been a junkie. There was a point where they disappeared. He was living with his mother, and the alienator was moved in with him for a while. That's why we think we were there. They were married. But then eventually his mother one day called her daughter-in-law and called her daughter-in-law and said that she hadn't heard from him, and asked if she knew where he was. So he had fallen off. He just went from recovering alcoholic in a midlife crisis who maintained contact to bam. And it was rather sudden because suddenly he was gone. And I haven't spoken to her in years, but he completely abandoned his children, who were, I think, 7 and 13, around those ages. Completely abandoned them. Had been a completely active father and stayed more so during midlife crisis. You don't become great in midlife crisis, but that first 2 years, clinging boomerang, different vanisher. Now, we don't normally see that, but there was a psychotic break. So what information do we have about him? We have the information in that situation that we know he was an alcoholic. We know that he disappeared from his mom. That was our grapevine information, that she didn't even know where he was suddenly. And that he had fallen off the wagon and we think married a junkie. Not much more is there. That it got so bad that he abandoned his children. Yeah. So that is a case where he seemed to become less stable. But is that always the case? Probably not. He couldn't handle being in contact as he had his breakdown. But maybe some just make a clean break. Maybe some who are more narcissistic, they find their supply elsewhere. Or they're not more narcissistic, but they just are there that way and they find their supply. Some appear to be vanishers because they don't ever contact you. But they're the puppet, and they have a puppet master, the alienator. And the reason they don't contact you is because of the alienator. But if it weren't for that person, maybe they would. And then let's say they break up with the alienator. Let's say 8 years later, they break up with you. Why don't they contact you now? Some will, but not out of the blue, because they're not looking to reconcile the relationship probably. They may do it on their amends tour, looking to make amends. And where are you in that lineup? Because you might be first in the lineup, but they are scared to do it. So it still could take a few years just for them to get up the nerve. Most of them aren't just going to say, okay, I've changed my mind. I'd like to come home now. Not only because they aren't thinking of it in that way, but they don't think that you would be open to that. And most people wouldn't. So sometimes why do they remain vanished is different than why they vanished in the first place. So if anyone has any more information on vanishers, in other words, a call to all of those who have vanishers but have more information from the grapevine to add to the data that can be added to vanishers, comment. Put comments on there if you have ideas about vanishers, if you know of past vanishers. And think about this. Vanishers are those who you hear from in some form of contact, not grapevine. Grapevine is different because they can't control the grapevine, but who you hear from a vanisher, they initiate some form of contact, or if you initiate a contact, they will contact you back. They respond once to twice a year or less. So if you hear from them twice a year or less, vanisher. If you haven't heard from them for 5 years, vanisher. Now, if you went through a regular midlife crisis for 3 years and then they stopped contacting you, is that just where they think their life is trending and they just eased off of contact? That could be it also. That doesn't have to mean they're a vanisher. Look at where they are in the crisis, because it doesn't mean that they're going to return to you or return to communication with you. And that doesn't have to mean they're a vanisher. But in the beginning and during their main crisis, what were they like? What was their contact type, especially during escape and avoid? Vanisher? We could use any information if you have it or if you know of some. So those of you who have been in this longer might have more information that could be offered. And I'm sorry that this wasn't as helpful as it could be, but I hope it is helpful. And I hope it gives some food for thought to others to comment and add to the data that we have or the information. And I will see everybody in the next question.